Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to quickly check out Heroes of Hammerwatch 2. Specifically, this is going to be a class overview video showing you the 7 different classes that are in the game, 4 of which are available from the start, and 3 of which you have to unlock as you go. So, the 7 classes that I want to quickly talk about, there's the Warrior, Wizard, Sorcerer, Paladin, Warlock, Ranger, and Rogue. The Warrior, the Wizard, the Paladin, and the Ranger are available from the beginning of the game, but you'll be finding the Warlock, the Rogue, and the Sorcerer as you progress through the campaign. You'll find the Rogue first, I believe, and then you'll find the Warlock, both of which are just keep playing the game, and you'll find them in the various rooms and dungeons that you'll be coming across. The Sorcerer, on the other hand, idly actually found, I don't know if it was by accident or what, but there is a castle that you cannot get through in the first part of the game. You actually have to go around and get inside a different way. But once you beat the second boss, which is Shadowface, then someone will be at that door to let you in, and that's how you unlock the Sorcerer. And that castle serves as a fast travel point that will automatically take you to the third act, which is kind of cool. There's also a fast travel point getting you to the second act. There's a camp that is sort of blocked off at first, but once you beat the first boss, that camp will open up and you can go through there and progress to the second act automatically. So anyway, aside from that, let's go ahead and take a look at each of the different characters and what they can do. Now, I just want to quickly note that we are not going to go over specializations. Once you reach level 10, you'll be able to specialize your class into one of 3 different categories. I kind of went over this in my last stream. The Wizard had 3 different specializations I could go into, and I chose Conjuration, but it looks like you can swap out between them at will. Now, I have not progressed far enough into the game to really unlock everything, but I can show you quickly what that looks like. As this is for the Wizard now. I chose Conjuration. That unlocks the Hydras and the Animated Sword, but you can also toggle between that and Evocation and Transmutation. So each class at level 10 will be able to specialize, and you can talk to this person here in order to do that. But again, today's video is going to focus more on the basic skills that these particular classes have to offer. And in case you're wondering, if you go to this skill trainer and you see these last 2 columns blocked off, that is reserved for your class specialization. So once you get a specialization, these 2 last columns will unlock, because normally if you don't have that specialization, it'll look something like this. So that's why these 2 last columns are locked. Once you reach level 10, pick a specialization, you'll unlock those. But let's go ahead now and look at each of these 7 different classes. As far as titles are concerned, and this is just really quick, the Wizard, like in the first game, Heroes of Hammerwatch, you'll be able to get passive benefits for leveling your characters, and that applies to an account-wide state. So if you are leveling up your Wizard, that will grant 24 spell power no matter what character you're using. Well, it's 2 per level. In this case, I'm level 12, and I'm granting 24 spell power to everybody, which is great. And my Ranger grants attack power 2 per level, and right now I'm level 6 with the Ranger, so I'm granting 12 attack power to every other character, including myself, which is nice. The Rogue will grant gold gain, 1.5 per level. The Sorcerer grants 0.5 mana regeneration, 0.1 per level. Phoenix, my Warlock, will grant fire, ice, lightning, and poison resistance 2 per level. My Warrior will be granting 3 health per level. And lastly, the Paladin will grant 2 armor per level. So depending on, which characters you prefer to play as, you'll be leveling them up and granting bonuses account-wide, which is great. But so there's a reason to play every character and level them up. You're granting various things. Like if you're playing a Wizard a lot, and you're blowing through mana left and right, you may want to find the Sorcerer, level up the Sorcerer to get that nice mana regen bonus, and then that again will apply to your casters, your Wizard or your Warlock, whatever. So that's super helpful there. Anyway, so let's go over each individual class and what skills they have. I'll hit I here and go into info. And we've got whirling axes. This is for the warrior now. Whirling axes. You throw 2 spinning axes that deal physical damage to all enemies in their path. Warcry. You and your allies in the area gain a buff that increases weapon and movement speed for a period of time. Warrior's Constitution increases your health and poison resistance. And lastly, Killing Spree. You gain stacks of Killing Spree by killing enemies. Each stack increases your damage. You lose all stacks at once if the duration runs out. So those are the 4 main skills. Again, we're not touching on specializations or anything like that. But just to see what that looks like, this is the left main attack for this weapon anyway. Depending on the weapon that you equip, you'll have different primary and secondary attacks. So this Great Axe Slash, that will change depending on what weapon you ultimately have equipped at that point in time. You know, equipping, say, an Ice Wand is different than a Fire Wand. It's going to do different things and have different secondary effects and so on. So, yeah, the Whirling Axes looks a little something like that, and then that's the Warcry. Okay, so now we're going to switch characters. We're going to move over to the wizard. I'm going to move him down here because my specialization has that sword, and it just goes nuts on that thing, that dummy. I'm going to go ahead and open up my inventory, and again, we're going to focus we're not going to focus on the 2 skills you get for specializing. We'll focus on the 4 basic ones. Magic Missiles. Discharges several magic missiles that seek out nearby enemies and deal physical damage on impact. Fireball unleashes a fireball towards the targeted location that explodes, dealing fire damage. Arcane Intellect increases your mana and intelligence. And lastly, Barrier. You generate protective stacks of barrier over time. When taking damage, a stack is expended, lowering the damage taken. To see what that looks like, that is the magic missiles there. Ignore the sword beating up on the dummy. And then with the Fireball, I click once to activate like a targeting area, and I click again and it does that. Alright, so that is the wizard. We'll now move on to a different character. Let's touch on the sorcerer, I suppose. I'm really liking the sorcerer, by the way. Alright, so opening up the stats there. Discharge, you unleash several arcs of lightning in a cone, dealing lightning damage. Each enemy can only be hit by 1 arc. The Elemental Orb, you conjure a slow-moving orb that continuously deals damage of all elements to nearby enemies. Innate Power, grant spell crit chance. And lastly, Elemental Affinity. It's a passive. When casting a spell, you gain Elemental Affinity of the same element as the spell cast. You deal more damage of the corresponding element as long as you have Elemental Affinity. You can only have 1 type of element active at a time. Okay, and to see what that looks like, that's pretty much Emperor Palpatine, I'm just saying. And then the other one is that orb. There we go. Now you start off with this electric wand or staff. That's what this is. But again, depending on your primary weapon, that will change. But considering that this character is very electric heavy, you're going to want that lightning staff, I think. I think that's going to be the way to go. But again, you've got the slow moving orb, and you've got the lightning cone there. Okay, moving on to a different character. We've got the Paladin. Seems like a primary healer, actually. There's no priest in this game, which is weird, but the Paladin, I guess, will fill that role with his heal. We go into info. We've got Blessed Strike. You strike all enemies in the area in front of you, dealing physical damage. Lay on Hands. You heal yourself and all allies around you. There's Armored Knight, increases your armor and grants a chance to block 100% physical damage. And lastly, Conviction. Your melee weapon hits have a chance to restore some of your mana. Alright, and to see what that looks like, that's the Shield Bash. There we go. And then Heal. And again, that's an area of effect that will heal your allies as well. Very useful during boss fights in your early game when no one has a whole lot of health to mess around with. Alright, switching characters, we'll move on to the Warlock. And this Warlock has Demon's Tail, conjures a diabolical whip to lash out in a forward direction, dealing physical damage and inflicting slow. Dark Ritual, you start performing a ritual that completes after a few seconds. Enemies take physical damage while inside the area, and even more damage when it completes. The ritual is terminated if you leave the area before it is completed. Drain Essence. You gain stacks of essence when hitting enemies with melee skills. Each stack increases your health and mana. This effect has a short cooldown. Lastly, Area of Atrophy. You project an aura around you that makes enemies deal less damage. And to show you what some of that looks like, that's the whip there. And then the ritual. You can move around, but you have to stay in the circle. There we go. If you step outside of the circle, well, the ritual just cancels, and you'll see that in a moment. If I do that and then step outside, it just cancels. So that is the Warlock. We'll switch characters now. We'll move to, let's see, we did the Warrior. Let's do the Ranger. And here we go. Marked Shot. You fire a projectile that deals physical damage and applies marked to all enemies in the targeted area. You deal more damage to enemies inflicted by mark. Trap. Throws a trap that deploys after a brief duration. The traps deal physical damage in a small area when triggered and inflict cripple. Rhythm. You gain weapon crit chance, and scoring weapon crits grant you stacks of rhythm. Each stack of rhythm increases your weapon crit chance and damage. Lastly, Survivalist. Each time you get hit, you gain a buff that reduces damage for a short period. This effect has a short cooldown. To show you some of that, this is the Marked Shot. Similar to the Fireball, you'll have to pick your area and then click again. And now the opponent is marked, taking it more increased damage. And then that's the trap there. See if I can get it right on them. There we go. So that's what that looks like. Let's go ahead and now move to a different character. The Rogue. I guess that's the last one. Info. So we've got Fan of Knives. Throws several knives in a cone, dealing physical damage. Flurry of Blades. You perform a series of strikes, hitting all enemies in an area around you, dealing physical damage. Slice and Dice. Hits with melee skills grant stacks of Slice and Dice. Each stack increases your weapon's speed. You lose all stacks at once if the duration runs out. And then lastly, Sidestep. Grants evasion and a single stack of guaranteed evasion that is recharged every few seconds. And to see what that looks like a Fan of Knives kind of thing. And then we've got this, which is kind of like a whirlwind attack. Alright, so there you go. That's a quick, brief overview of the different characters that are in the game. And keep in mind, again, each of them have their own titles that do carry to the other characters. So you may want to consider creating one of each character, even if you really don't level them. Just the act of creating one will start the whole process of getting some kind of passive benefit. Because even at level 1, they give you something. So if you're gonna run with a wizard for a very long time, create one of each of everyone else, and at least they'll give their level 1 effect to their wizard. So anyway, quick look at Heroes of Hammerwatch 2 and all the different classes that are currently in the game. I'll try and get the other classes to level 10 to show you their specializations, but obviously this game is grindy and it's going to take some time. Well, until that happens, this is Vince. Thanks for watching. I'll catch y'all next time. Take care.